Namaste. Aloha. My name is Janapati Das. We are going to get into some more Krishna book reading tonight. Please accept my respects. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto Jagaguru Siddhaswarapananda Paramahamsa Srila Prabhupada and His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Please join me in doing some Sankirtan, some Kirtan. Haribol. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Please accept my respects and let me offer my respectful obeisances to my spiritual master. Welcome again to Krishna book reading. We had been reading about, our last story was a story of the deliverance of the demon Bhamasura, who had this really funny story, very wonderful and very funny and very awesome story about the demon Bhamasura, who had stolen something from the demigod Varuna and then the wife of Lord Indra, Aditi, her earrings. And of course, Lord Indra, being unable, demigods are always bothered by demons, and even though they're so powerful, they're constantly being undermined by demons. And so Krishna always has to step in to sort of rectify the situation. So Indra couldn't, even though he's so powerful, he could not deal with this. So he went to place a complaint with Lord Krishna, of course. So Lord Krishna did a great battle with this, killed the demons, and of course was protected the son of Bhamasura, because the mother was none other than the goddess of the earth, Bhumi, and asked that Lord Krishna protect her son, because he was there to surrender to Krishna. So Krishna always protects the devotees that take surrender unto his lotus feet, no matter how offensive they may have been. If they take shelter of Krishna, Krishna will protect them. And of course, we had the sort of tag story that was very funny, actually, with Krishna returning everything, and then of course Krishna had stolen the Parijata flower bush for his wife Satyabhama, who actually wanted flowers, a little bit jealous because Rukmini had gotten a flower from Narada and wanted one also. And so they just took a whole bush. But of course, Lord Indra and the residents of the heavenly planets were kind of miffed by that, and it's just very typical of Lord Indra to always forget his position in the situation of here he'd been protected by Lord Krishna and gotten his wife's earrings back, and he turns around and he starts to fight with Krishna over a bush of flowers. So it was really pretty funny. And today we're just going to continue on to another wonderful and beautiful story in the talks between Krishna and Rukmini. Once upon a time, Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the bestower of all knowledge to all living entities, from Brahma to the insignificant ant. This is a very important point, of course. Lord Krishna is the bestower of all knowledge. And I'm going to see if I can adjust sorry, guess I can't do anything now. I wanted to fix the HD on there. Anyway, so yes, Krishna is the source of all knowledge, all wisdom, to the insignificant ant, as Bhaktivedanta puts it here, all the way up to the creator of the universe. So he was sitting in the bedroom of Rukmini, who was engaged in the service of the Lord, along with her assistant maidservants. Krishna was sitting on the bedstand of Rukmini, and maidservants were engaged in fanning him with chamaras, yak-tail fly whisks. So sometimes in our offering, if we have an artik tray, when we offer, if you've sometimes seen this, when we're making an offering to the deity, we have this artik tray, and one of them is a whisk tail chamara. It's to keep the flies away from the food of the offering of Krishna. Lord Krishna's dealings with Rukmini as a perfect husband is a perfect manifestation of the supreme perfection of the personality of Godhead. There are many philosophers who propound a concept of the absolute truth in which God cannot do this or that. So even many religious people will argue this, God, they'll say that God is an impersonal force because God cannot have a form. Why can't God have a form? We know that the form of Krishna is Sat Chit Ananda, and we put the Vigraha at the end, which has to do with spiritual form, right? And there's many references in a lot of scriptures, not just Vedic scriptures. There's reference of Krishna, of God being a person, in many references, and that's there's a reference in the Old Testament where Aaron and I guess Sarah get upset because Moses is being asked by Yahweh or God to constantly be in charge of the temple and be go in and have time with the Supreme Lord, and they get jealous because they get jealous and envious, and they start to complain to God, and God tells them that I will see Moses face to face because he is not envious of me, basically is what he says. These other people complaining they're envious, right? They're actually envious of God, that they think they're important enough to be able to be seen. But they say face to face, right? There's a lot of other references in the story in the Quran where Muhammad takes a winged flight on a winged donkey, to Jerusalem, where the Temple Mount is, right? And at that point, he goes up 7 levels of heaven, and at every level of heaven, there's actually a devotee like Jesus and different kinds of and he gets to the very last stage, and it's a blinding white light, like the Brahma. It's basically the Brahma Jyoti, right? And he says, and the Archangel Michael says, I cannot go past this point because the light is too blinding. Only you can, because you are a dear devotee of God. And so it said that Muhammad had gone past that blinding light and saw Allah face to face. So there we go again. When you have a face, you have a body. So it's a spiritual form, right? And there's many references, of course. And we know that there's this reference in the Sri Upanishad where it says the devotee is asking God to please let me go beyond the Brahma Jyoti white light. I want to see this dazzling white light. I want to see your spiritual form. And so this is really what is being said. So there's a lot of times people cannot will say things like this: God cannot do that, God cannot do this. So oftentimes people who are atheistic will dismiss the idea that God can create a universe or multiple universes, or God can do this or do that. And they oftentimes think of that. They won't say this, but they think of this as sort of the concept of I cannot do it, or I don't know anybody who can do it, so therefore God can't do it. But we're talking about the Supreme Personality of Godhead here. Even from a point of view of a demigod to a human, or a human to an ant, or a microbe. How majestic, and in a microbe, can it even understand a human being? So what's to say, can we really understand the ways of demigods, or let alone that of the Supreme Personality of Godhead? We cannot. We don't have the capability of understanding him completely as he is. Even great expansions like Shesha, Nanga, and demigods don't even know Krishna. But pure devotees, they know them enough to know that they're their dear absolute truth, their dear one. And Sheshananga said that he does not have he's been trying to praise Krishna for forever. It's almost like, and he still has not even scratched the surface of the great opulences and powers that the Supreme Lord has. So this is something that we can't even, we start to think about these kind of concepts of like the universes and the multi-dimensions that the Vedas often talk about. We can't even enter that. We can't even enter the idea of our own solar system, understanding the complexity of the solar system, or, what's on Venus, or what's, what is inside the core of Mars. We don't really know these things. We're just scratching the surface of like what we really understand in science. And most of science is based on, speculative like guesses, which are not really true. So they deny the incarnation of God, or the supreme absolute truth in human form. But actually the fact is different. God cannot be subjected to our imperfect sensual activity. So that point is a very important point. Our faculties to understand, even understanding material science, is so imperfect and faulty that this argument that has been brought, the Vedas, the Vedic knowledge is said to be self-evident. It doesn't need an imperfect formula as empirical knowledge, which is based on the collection and calculation of information with using faulty senses in our mind, which is completely faulty, based to try to prove something that is self-evident. So it's kind of backwards. We don't need the empirical knowledge to try to prove Vedic science. We need the Vedic science to prove what is right and what is wrong in the empirical science. So people have it backwards. But that has to do not really so much with whether it's true or not. It has to do with the fact that a lot of people who are atheistic or scientists are envious, and they're given what they want to believe in. This is where they want to stand, and so Krishna gives them the information to deny their existence, and so it's very strong. It's very grounded. But when you compare it with the information from the Vedic knowledge, it's just like child's play. It's like arithmetic compared to post calculus. So God cannot be subjected to our imperfect sensual activities. And that's a pretty common kind of thing. If you take something that's so beyond the material science, beyond, that is the source of all things, it's kind of like trying to say, I can accumulate the ocean using a little squeezer. Like if I have a glass, like if I take a glass of the ocean, I have the whole ocean. It's like, no, our senses are limited. They're faulty. They don't have the full capability to try to understand something so grand and so grandeur as God, let alone like the creator of this universe or any of the demigods. We don't even have that kind of power. We don't even have the power to fully understand the material universe that we're in. It's kind of mind-blowing. But it's not really mind-blowing in the sense that when you understand that if an atheistic person wants to deny the existence of God, wants to be independent, wants to be envious and separate from Krishna, that's their desire, and Krishna will give them what they desire. So when you talk to people like this, they just think they can't see that. They don't see it. But in the practice of Bhakti Yoga, when the hearing and chanting of Krishna's names and all the other things that go with it, all the forms of hearing and repeating and remembering and worshiping the deity and making friends with Krishna and so many other kinds of processes that are laid out, like in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, of the things that you can do to develop your relationship with Krishna. Krishna gives you the knowledge and the experience, the direct experience by which to understand him. So that's what's, so sometimes it's just not even a point to argue these things with people who are not really interested. And even Sri Rupa Goswami has made that point. Don't try to preach bhakti yoga to people who are, it's like Jesus said, don't give the pearls to the swine, They're not going to accept it. Jesus said, even tried to preach to the Pharisees, but the Pharisees were so envious and so arrogant that Krishna had put had basically given them the information to not understand what Jesus was saying, even though it was very clear. And, this also is stated in the Quran. The Quran has oftentimes that said Allah will put a seal on your heart. And that is because of our desires to be separate from God, And so until we've been slapped around by Maya Devi enough in our life, we thinking, oh, this world is great, I'm striving for my happiness, I'm going for my joy, and all these things are going to make me happy, and we just find that it doesn't, and then we just die, and then we have to start all over again in some other life form. Maybe if we'll be lucky if we're in a human form of life, but most likely not. We're in some 8,400,000 species of life, and it's just again and again and again and again until we just get to a human form of life where we've been fortunate by the mercy of Krishna to be able to either hear the chanting at some point, come into contact with a devotee of Krishna, or just realized that this world is not my home. This world is not going to bring me any kind of happiness, and I need to develop my relationship with God. And that could be and many people do that, not just from a Vedic point of view, but they do that in Christian or Muslim or Jewish or whatever. They have this really deep faith and deep relationship, and they realize I'm not my body. My senses do not bring me fulfillment and happiness. My real happiness is in my relationship with God. And so it's a very wonderful thing to think. But they say they deny the incarnation of God or the supreme absolute truth in human form, but actually the fact is different. God cannot be subjected to our imperfect sensual activities. He is the all-powerful, omnipresent personality of Godhead, and by his supreme will, he can not only create, maintain, and annihilate the whole cosmic manifestation, but he can also descend as an ordinary human being in order to execute the highest mission. Try to understand that. When you have something like that, the supreme, omnipresent, all-powerful source of all things is a person, is a spiritual person. We cannot try to, there's two forms of trying to understand spiritual knowledge. One is called the ascending process, one is called the descending process. Ascending process, which a lot of people have speculators and whatnot, they think that with my mind power, I will climb to the absolute truth and come to know God. But the problem is when you try to come to know God, it's not like God is some abstract idea that you can are like a mountain that you can climb up and get to the top of. It's a person. If you don't want to have a relationship, but you want to conquer, imagine that. Just like you're going down the street and you see some beautiful woman, beautiful man, if you're a woman or whatever, and you think, oh, that person is very beautiful, I want to marry that person. And you say, grab them by the hair and say, you come with me, I'm going to marry you. I guess in some cultures that was a forceful way of doing things in the past, but in reality, that person's going to be like, get the hell away from me. What do you have to do? You have to have a relationship with that person. You have to get to know that person, understand who they are, what they like, how you're compatible, show compassion upon that person and love on that person. And then there's an attraction that happens. So the same thing is with God. God is interested in our loving relationship with him. That is our natural function. So anything other than that, to say, oh, well, I can't figure God out. It's so silly and so ignorant. But, the understanding Krishna is at the lowest point of humility, of saying that I am the most sinful person. I'm the most envious person, but I need the mercy of God. I need the understanding of how I can have a loving relationship with God. And God will present you with that. So, as stated in the Bhagavad Gita, whenever there are discrepancies in the discharge of human occupational duties, he descends. He is not forced to appear by any external agency, but descends by his own internal potency in order to reestablish the standard functions of human activities, as well as to simultaneously annihilate the disturbing elements in the progressive march of human civilization. So even like other religions don't have a full understanding about the potency and power of God. It's not just that God creates the universe, he indirectly creates the universe. He doesn't have a direct involvement in creating the universe. He has other expansions that they do things like Lord Brahma or other living entities that do the job for him. And but he indirectly is able to do that. He create through multitude of universes of all the living entities, and just by his glance he can, send these creatures into, or these living beings into the material universe because of their desire to not serve him. There's so much to be said that, about that. And we can talk about the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but we'll just go on here. He is not forced to appear by any external agency, but descends by his own internal potency in order to reestablish the standard functions of human activities, as well as to simultaneously annihilate the disturbing elements in the progressive march of human civilization. In accordance with this principle of the transcendental pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he descended in his eternal form of Sri Krishna in the dynasty of the Yadus. The palace of Rukmini was wonderfully furnished. There were many canopies hanging on the ceiling with laces bedecked with pearl garlands, and the whole palace was illuminated by the effulgence of valuable jewels. There were many flower orchards with bela and chameli, which are considered to be the most fragrant flowers in India. There were many clusters of these plants with blooming flowers enhancing the beauty of the palace, and because of the exquisite fragrance of the flowers, little groups of hummingbees were gathered around the trees, and at night the pleasing moonshine glittered through the network of holes in the windows. There were many heavily flowered trees of parijata. We remember that flower, of course, parijata flower from the last story. And the mild wind stirred the flavor of the flowers all around. Within the walls of the palace there was incense burning, and the fragrant smoke was leaking out of the window shutters. Within the room there were mattresses covered with white bed sheets resembling the foam of milk. The bedding was as soft and white as milk foam. In this situation, Lord Sri Krishna was very comfortably sitting and enjoying the service of Rukmini ji, assisted by her maidservants. Rukmini was also very eager to get the opportunity of serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead as her husband. She therefore wanted to serve the Lord personally, and took the handle of the chamara from the hand of the maidservant and began to move the fan. The handle of the chamara was made of gold, decorated and bedecked with valuable jewels, and it became more beautiful when it was taken by Rukmini, because all her fingers were beautifully set with jeweled rings. Her legs were decorated with ankle bells and jewels, which rang very softly between the pleats of her sari. Rukmini's raised breasts were smeared with kunkuma and saffron. Thus her beauty was enhanced by the reflection of the reddish color emanating from her covered breasts. The highly raised lower part of her buttocks was decorated with jeweled laced girdle, and a locket of great effulgence hung on her neck. Above all, she was engaged in the service of Lord Krishna. Although at that time she was old enough to have grown-up sons, her beautiful body was beyond compare in the three worlds. When we take account of her beautiful face, it appears that the curling hair on her head, the beautiful earrings on her ears, her smiling mouth, and her necklace of gold all combined to shower rains of nectar. And it was definitely proved that Rukmini was none other than the original goddess of fortune, who is always engaged in the service of the lotus feet of Narayan. The pastimes of Krishna and Rukmini and Dwarka are accepted by great authorities as manifestations of those of Narayan and Lakshmi, which are of an exalted opulence. The pastime of Radha and Krishna and Vrindavan are simple and rural, distinguished from the polished urban characteristics of those of Dwarka. The characteristics of Rukmini were unusually bright, and Krishna was very much satisfied with her behavior. Krishna had experienced that when Rukmini was offered a parijata flower by Narada Muni, Satyabhama had become envious of her co-wife and had immediately demanded a similar flower from Krishna. In fact, she could not be pacified until she was promised the whole tree. That was actually done by Krishna. The tree was brought down to the earth planet from the heavenly kingdom. After this episode, Krishna expected that because Satyabhama had been rewarded by a full tree of parijata, Rukmini would also demand something. Rukmini did not mention anything of the incident, however, for she was grave and simply satisfied in her service. Krishna wanted to see her a bit irritated, and therefore he schemed in order to see the beautiful face of Rukmini in an irritated condition. This is great. Krishna loves to just get, that's why he would get kind of enjoy the fact of making the gopis angry at him, or just so he could see their beautiful face angry. And so he would actually do things to irritate his wives. But Rukmini, she's so pure, she just, takes it. And this is in our story here. Although Krishna had more than 16,100 wives, he used to behave with each of them with familial affection. He would create a particular situation between himself and his wife in which the wife would criticize him in the irritation of love, and Krishna would enjoy this. In this case, because Krishna could not find any fault with Rukmini, for she was very great and always engaged in his service, he smilingly, in great love, began to speak to her. Rukmini was the daughter of King Bhishmaka, a powerful king. Thus, Krishna did not address her as Rukmini. He addressed her this time as a princess. My dear princess, it is very surprising. Many great personalities in the royal order wanted to marry you, although not all of them were kings. All possessed the opulence and riches of the kingly order. They were well-behaved, learned, famous among kings, beautiful in their bodily features and personal qualifications, liberal, very powerful in strength, and advanced in every respect. They were not unfit in any way, and over and above that, your father and your brother had no objection to such marriages. On the contrary, they gave their word of honor that you would be married with Shishapala. The marriage was sanctioned by your parents. Shishapala was a great king and was so lusty and mad after your beauty that if he had married you, I think he would have always remained with you just like your faithful servant. In comparison to Shishapala with his personal qualities, I am nothing, and you may personally realize it. I am surprised that you rejected the marriage with Shishapala and accepted me, who am inferior in comparison to Shishapala. I think myself completely unfit to be your husband, because you are so beautiful, sober, grave, and exalted. May I inquire from you the reason that induced you to accept me? Now, of course, I can't address you as my beautiful wife, but still I may inform you of my actual position, that I am inferior to all those princes who wanted to marry you. First of all, you may know that I was very much afraid of Jarasandha, that I could not dare to live on the land, and thus I have constructed this house within the water of the sea. It is not my business to disclose the secret to others, but you must know that I am not very heroic. I am a coward, and I am afraid of them. Still, I am not safe, because all the great kings of the land are inimical to me. I have personally created this inimical feeling by fighting with them in many ways. Another fault is that, although I am on the throne of Dwarka, I have no immediate claim. Although I got a kingdom by killing my maternal uncle Kamsa, the kingdom was to go to my grandfather, so actually I have no possession of a kingdom. Besides that, I have no fixed aim in life. People cannot understand me very well. What is the ultimate goal of my life? They know very well that I was a coward boy in Vrindavan. People expected that I would follow the footsteps of my foster father Nanda Maharaj and be faithful to Srimati Radharani and all her friends in the village of Vrindavan, but all of a sudden I left them. I wanted to become a famous prince. Still, I could not have any kingdom, nor could I rule as a prince. People are bewildered about my ultimate goal of life. They do not know whether I am a coward boy or a prince, whether I am a son of Nanda Maharaj or the son of Vasudeva. Because I have no fixed aim in life, people may call me a vagabond. Therefore, I am surprised that you could select such a vagabond husband. Besides this, I am not very much polished, even in social etiquette. A person should be satisfied with one wife, but you see, I have married many times, and I have more than 16,000 wives. I cannot please all of them as a polished husband. My behavior with them is not very nice, and I know you are very much conscious of it. I sometimes create a situation with my wife which is not very happy. Because I was trained in a village in my childhood, I am not well acquainted with the etiquette of urban life. I do not know the way to please a wife with nice words and behavior. And from practical experience, it is found that any woman who follows my way or becomes attracted to me is ultimately left to cry for the rest of her life. In Vrindavan, many gopis were attracted to me, and now I have left them, and they are living, but are simply crying for me in separation. I have heard from Akura and Adava that since I left Vrindavan, all my cowherd boyfriends, the gopis and Radharani, and my foster father Nanda Maharaj are simply crying constantly for me. I have left Vrindavan for good and now am engaged with the queens in Dwarka, but I am not well behaved with any of you. So you can very easily understand that I have no steadiness of character. I am not very reliable husband. The net result of being attracted to me is to acquire a life of bereavement only. My dear beautiful princess, you may also know that I was always penniless. Just after my birth, I was carried penniless to the house of Nanda Maharaj, and I was raised just like a cowherd boy. Although my foster father possessed many hundreds of thousands of cows, I was not a proprietor of even one of them. I was simply entrusted to take care of them and tender them, but I was not the proprietor. Here also I am not proprietor of anything, but I am always penniless. There is no cause to lament for such a penniless condition. I possessed nothing in the past, so why should I lament that I do not possess anything at present? You may note also that my devotees are not very opulent persons. They are also very poor in worldly goods. Those who are very rich, possessing worldly wealth, are not interested in devotion to me or Krishna consciousness. On the contrary, when a person becomes penniless, whether by force or by circumstances, he may become interested in me if he gets the proper opportunity. Persons who are proud of their riches, even if they are offered association with my devotees, do not take advantage of the consciousness of me. In other words, the poorer class of men may have some interest in me, but the richer class of men have no interest. I think, therefore, that your selection of me was not very intelligent. You appear very intelligent, trained by your father and brother, but ultimately you have made a great mistake in selecting your life's companion. But if there's no harm, it's better late than never. You are at liberty to select a suitable husband who is actually an equal to you in opulence, family tradition, wealth, beauty, education, in all respects. Whatever mistakes you may have made may be forgotten. Now, you may chalk out your own lucrative path of life. Usually a person does not establish a marital relationship with a person who is either higher or lower than his position. My dear daughter of the king of Vidarbha, I think that you did not consider very sagaciously before your marriage. Thus, you made a wrong selection by choosing me as your husband. You mistakenly heard about my having very exalted character, although factually I was nothing more than a beggar. Without seeing me and my actual position, simply hearing about me, you selected me as your husband. That was not very rightly done. Therefore, I advise you that it is better late than never. You can now select one of the great Kshatriya princes and accept him as your life's companion, and you can reject me. Krishna was proposing that Rukmini's divorce him at a time when Rukmini already had many grown-up children. Therefore, Krishna's whole proposition to Rukmini appeared to be something unexpected, because according to Vedic culture, there was no such thing as separation of husband and wife by divorce. Nor was it possible for Rukmini to do so in an advanced age when she had so many married sons. Each and every one of Krishna's proposals appeared to Rukmini to be crazy, and she was surprised that Krishna could say such things. Simple as she was, her anxiety was increasing more and more at the thought of separation from Krishna. Krishna continued, "After all, you have to prepare yourself for your next life. I therefore advise you to select someone who can help you both in this life and the next life, for I am completely unable to help. My dear beautiful princess, you know that all the members of the princely order, including Shishapala, Shalva, Jartsanda, Dantavarka, and even your elder brother Rukmi, are all my enemies. They do not like me at all. They hate me from the cores of their hearts. All these princes were very much puffed up with their worldly possessions, and they did not care a fig for anyone who came before them. In order to teach them some lessons, I agreed to kidnap you according to your desire. Otherwise, I actually have no love for you, although you loved me even before the marriage. As I've already explained, I'm not very much interested in family life or love between husband and wife. By nature, I am not very fond of family life, wife, children, home, and opulences. As my devotees are always neglectful of all these worldly possessions, I am also like that. Actually, I am interested in self-realization. That gives me pleasure, and not this family life. After submitting his statement, Lord Krishna suddenly stopped. The great authority, Shukadev Goswami, remarks that Krishna almost always passed his time with Rukmini, and Rukmini was a bit proud to be so fortunate that Krishna never left her even for a moment. Krishna, however, does not like any of his devotees to be proud. As soon as devotee becomes so by some tactic, he cuts down that pride. In this case also, Krishna said many things which were hard for Rukmini to hear. She could only conclude that although she was proud of her position, Krishna could be separated from her at any moment. Rukmini was conscious that her husband was not an ordinary human being. He was the supreme personality of Godhead, the master of the three worlds. By the way he was speaking, she was afraid of being separated from the Lord, for she had never heard such harsh words from Krishna before. Thus, she became perplexed with fear of separation, and her heart began to palpitate. Without replying to a word of Krishna's statement, she simply cried in great anxiety, as if being drowned in an ocean of grief. She silently scratched the ground with the nails of her toes, which were reflecting reddish light on the ground. The tears from her eyes were pink, mixed with the black cosmetic ointment from her eyelids, and the waters were dropping down, washing the kunkuma and saffron from her breasts. Choked up on account of great anxiety, unable to speak even a word, she kept her head downward and remained standing just like a stick. Due to extremely painful fearfulness and lamentation, she lost all her reasoning powers and became so weak that immediately her body lost so much weight that the bangles on her wrists became slackened. The chamara rod in which she was serving Krishna immediately fell from her hand. Her brain and memory became puzzled, and she lost consciousness. The nicely combed hair on her head scattered here and there. She fell down straight, like a banana tree cut down by a whirlwind. Lord Krishna immediately realized that Rukmini had not taken his words in a joking spirit. She had taken them very seriously, and in her extreme anxiety over immediate separation from him, she had fallen into this condition. Lord Sri Krishna is naturally very affectionate towards his devotees, and seeing Rukmini's condition, his heart immediately became softened. At once, he became merciful to her. The relationship between Krishna and Rukmini was Lakshmi Narayan. Therefore, he appeared before her in his four-handed manifestation of Narayan. He got down from the bedstead, brought her up by her hands, and placing his cooling hands on her face, smoothed the scattered hairs on her head. Lord Krishna dried the wet breast of Rukmini with his hand. Understanding the seriousness of Rukmini's love for him, he embraced her to his chest. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is very expert in putting a thing reasonably for one's understanding, and thus he tried to retract all that he had said before. He is the only resort for all the devotees, and so he knows very well how to satisfy his pure devotees. Krishna understood that Rukmini could not follow the statements which he had made in a joking way. To counteract her confusion, he again began to speak as follows. Woo! So this is really, really beautiful. I'm going to have to continue on to next time where we can read the rest of these prayers and, of course, Rukmini's reply. But so really wonderful. He's trying to get his Rukmini to get angry with him, and she's like tripping out. Body's freaking out. So, awesome story. Thank you very much. Let's chant a little bit. Nitai Gaur, Nitai Gaur, Hari Gaur, Nitai Gaur, Nitai Gaur, Hari Gaur, Nitai Gaur, Nitai Gaur, Hari Gaur, Hari Gaur, Nitai Gaur, Nitai Gaur, Hari Gaur, Nityananda, 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 Hari Gaur, Chaitanya, 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 Hari Gaur, Nityananda, 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 Hari Gaur, Chaitanya, 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 Hari Gaur, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Gopala Govinda Rama, Bhajana Mohana, Gopala Govinda Rama, Bhajana Mohana, Gopala Govinda Rama, Bhajana Mohana, Gopala Govinda Okay, so that is all for tonight. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe to my channel, YouTube channel, and there are many, many videos here on the Krishna book. Feel free to look through those, and we'll see you next time. Have a wonderful evening. Namaste.